Dr. Alaravari stepped out of the transport shuttle, her eyes taking in the desolate landscape before her. The once vibrant city of Zephyria lay in ruins, its towering skyscrapers reduced to rubble and its streets littered with the debris of war. The acrid smell of smoke and the distant echoes of gunfire served as a stark reminder of the ongoing conflict that had ravaged the planet for months. Alara adjusted the straps of her medical pack, steeling herself for the task ahead. As a renowned xenologist and physician, she had volunteered to lead a humanitarian mission to Zephyria, determined to provide aid to the countless victims of the Korvax Empire's ruthless invasion. With a team of dedicated medical professionals at her side, she set out to establish a makeshift hospital in the heart of the war-torn city. As they navigated the treacherous streets, Alara's mind raced with the challenges they would face. The Korvax Empire had shown no mercy in their conquest, employing advanced weaponry and brutal tactics to crush any resistance. The local population, caught in the crossfire, had suffered immensely, with countless lives lost and even more displaced. Suddenly, a faint cry caught Alara's attention. She signaled her team to halt, straining her ears to locate the source of the sound. There, amidst a pile of rubble, lay a critically injured soldier, his armor bearing the insignia of the Zephyrian resistance. Alara rushed to his side, her medical instincts taking over as she assessed his wounds. The soldier, barely conscious, looked up at her with pain-filled eyes. "Please," he whispered, his voice ragged with exhaustion, "don't let me die here." Alara's heart clenched at the desperation in his plea. She gently placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now. We're here to help." With practiced efficiency, Alara and her team carefully extracted the soldier from the debris, stabilizing his condition as best they could with their limited resources. As they carried him back to their makeshift hospital, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that this soldier's fate would somehow be intertwined with her own. Over the next few hours, Alara worked tirelessly to save the soldier's life. She learned that his name was Rakan Doran, a once promising young officer who had lost everything in the war. His squad had been ambushed by Korvax forces, leaving him as the sole survivor. The physical and emotional toll of his ordeal was evident in every line of his battered body. As she tended to Rakan's wounds, Alara found herself drawn to his story. Despite the pain and grief that consumed him, there was a flicker of determination in his eyes, a resilience that refused to be extinguished. It was a quality she had seen in many of the soldiers and civilians she had treated over the years, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who had endured the horrors of war. But Rakan's road to recovery would be long and arduous. The extent of his injuries, both physical and psychological, would require more than just medical expertise to overcome. Alara knew that she would need to be more than just a doctor to him, she would need to be a guide, a confidant, and a beacon of hope in a world consumed by darkness. As the first rays of dawn began to filter through the crumbling walls of the hospital, Alara looked out over the war-ravaged city. The task before her seemed insurmountable, the suffering of the Zephyrian people beyond measure. But with Rakan's arrival, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, a glimmer of light amidst the shadows. She turned back to Rakan's bedside, watching as his chest rose and fell with each labored breath. In that moment, she made a silent vow to herself and to him. No matter the challenges that lay ahead, she would not rest until she had mended the wounds of war, both in body and in spirit. For in the act of healing others, perhaps she too would find a measure of peace and redemption in a galaxy torn asunder. Unraveling the wounds. As the days turned into weeks, Dr. Alaravari found herself immersed in the challenges of running the makeshift hospital in the heart of war-torn Zephyria. The constant influx of wounded soldiers and civilians stretched their resources to the limit, but Alara refused to let the overwhelming need deter her from her mission. Amidst the chaos and despair, Rakan Doran's presence became a constant in Alara's life. As she worked tirelessly to heal his physical wounds, she began to uncover the depths of the emotional scars that the war had left on his soul. Rakan, once a proud and determined soldier, now lay broken and lost, his spirit shattered by the loss of his squad and the horrors he had witnessed. Alara spent long hours at Rockin's bedside, not only tending to his injuries but also listening to his stories. She learned of the camaraderie he had shared with his fellow soldiers, the dreams they had held for a future free from the oppression of the Korvax Empire. She saw the pain in his eyes as he recounted the moment when everything had changed, when a single ambush had torn his world apart. As Rockin spoke, Alara began to understand the true extent of the devastation caused by the Korvax invasion. The Empire's ruthless tactics had left no corner of Zephyria untouched, with entire cities reduced to rubble and countless lives shattered beyond repair. The physical wounds were only the surface of the suffering, it was the emotional and psychological scars that ran deepest, threatening to consume those who had survived. Rockin, in his moments of lucidity, would often speak of his desire for vengeance. The loss of his squad had ignited a burning rage within him, a thirst for retribution that threatened to eclipse all else. He spoke of returning to the battlefield, of making the Korvax pay for every life they had taken. Alara listened patiently, her heart aching for the pain that Rockin carried. She knew that the path of vengeance would only lead to more suffering, more lives lost in an endless cycle of violence. But she also understood the depth of his grief, the desperate need to find meaning in the face of such overwhelming loss. As Rockin's condition began to improve, Alara found herself torn between her duties as a physician and her growing desire to help him find a new purpose. She knew that healing his physical wounds was only the first step in his recovery, the true challenge would lie in mending the shattered pieces of his soul. Alara's team, too, felt the weight of the task before them. They worked tirelessly, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion as they fought to save lives and ease suffering. But even amidst the darkness, there were moments of hope, of resilience in the face of unimaginable odds. One such moment came when a young Zephyrian girl was brought to the hospital, her small body ravaged by the effects of a Korvax bioweapon. Alara and her team worked through the night, employing every ounce of their skill and knowledge to stabilize her condition. When the girl finally opened her eyes, her smile was a beacon of light amidst the shadows, reminder of the innocence and beauty that still existed in the world. As Alara looked upon the faces of the wounded and the weary, she knew that her mission was far from over. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, fraught with challenges both medical and moral. But with each life saved, each flicker of hope rekindled, she found the strength to press on. And so, as the war raged on beyond the walls of the hospital, Dr. Alara Varis continued her work, driven by a fierce determination to mend the wounds of war, one patient at a time. For in the act of healing, she knew that she was not only saving lives but also preserving the very essence of what made them human in the face of unimaginable darkness. A bond forged in adversity. As the weeks stretched into months, Dr. Alara Varis found herself increasingly drawn to Rockin Doran's struggle. Through countless hours of medical treatments and heartfelt conversations, she began to see beyond the broken soldier, glimpsing the man he once was and the potential for who he could become. Rockin's physical wounds slowly healed, thanks to Alara's tireless efforts and the cutting-edge medical techniques she employed. But the emotional scars ran deep, and Alara knew that true recovery would require more than just advanced technology. It would take patience, understanding, and a willingness to confront the demons that haunted him. Alara's compassion and gentle guidance began to chip away at the walls Rockin had built around his heart. Slowly, hesitantly, he started to open up about his experiences, sharing the burden of his pain and guilt. He spoke of the nightmares that plagued him, the faces of his fallen comrades that haunted his every waking moment. Through their conversations, Alara came to understand the depth of Rockin's loyalty and the weight of the responsibility he felt for those under his command. She saw the way his eyes clouded with grief when he spoke of the lives he couldn't save, the decisions he wished he could unmake. But Alara also saw the flickers of hope that still resided within him, the embers of a spirit that refused to be extinguished. She encouraged Rockin to focus on the lives he had touched, the difference he had made in the midst of so much suffering. She reminded him that his survival was not a curse, but a chance to honor the memories of those who had fallen. As Rockin began to embrace the possibility of a life beyond the battlefield, Alara realized that his healing had become more than just a medical challenge. It had become a personal mission, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. Together, Alara and Rakan started to envision a future where they could use their experiences to help others. They dreamed of establishing a network of support for wounded soldiers and displaced civilians, a haven where they could find solace and strength in the bonds of shared experience. As word of their efforts spread, other survivors began to seek them out, drawn to the promise of healing and understanding. The makeshift hospital became more than just a place of medical treatment, it became a beacon of hope in a war-torn world, a testament to the power of compassion and unity. But even as their work began to bear fruit, Alara and Rakan knew that their efforts had not gone unnoticed by the Korvax Empire. The ruthless invaders saw the hospital as a threat to their control, a symbol of defiance in the face of their oppression. Whispers of an impending attack began to circulate, and Alara found herself faced with a choice. She could abandon the hospital and the countless lives that depended on her, or she could stand and fight, risking everything to protect the fragile hope they had built. In the end, there was no choice at all. Alara knew that she could not turn her back on those who needed her, on the bonds of trust and compassion that had been forged in the crucible of war. And so, with Rakan at her side, she prepared to face the coming storm, armed with nothing more than her unwavering determination and the strength of the human spirit. As the first signs of the Korvax attack loomed on the horizon, Alara and Rakan exchanged a look of quiet resolve. They knew that the battle ahead would test them in ways they had never been tested before, but they also knew that they would face it together, bound by a love and a purpose that transcended the horrors of war. And so, as the shadows of the Korvax Empire descended upon them, Dr. Alara Varis and Rakan Doran stood tall, ready to defend the lives and the dreams they had fought so hard to protect. For in the end, they knew that the true measure of their strength lay not in the weapons they wielded, but in the unbreakable bonds of the human heart. The unbreakable human spirit. As the Korvax Empire's forces descended upon the makeshift hospital, Dr. Alara Varis and Rakan Doran found themselves at the center of a maelstrom of chaos and destruction. The once quiet halls erupted with the sounds of gunfire and the cries of the wounded, as the invaders sought to crush the last bastion of hope in the war-torn city. Alara, her medical uniform stained with the blood of the fallen, worked tirelessly to evacuate the patients, her focus unwavering even as the battle raged around her. Rakan, his newly healed body fueled by adrenaline and determination, took up arms alongside the hospital's meager security forces, determined to protect the lives they had fought so hard to save. Together, they formed an unbreakable bond, a force of resilience and compassion amidst the brutality of war. Alara's medical expertise and Rakan's tactical knowledge worked in perfect harmony, as they fought to keep the hospital and its precious cargo safe from the onslaught of the Korvax. As the battle intensified, Rakan found himself face to face with the demons of his past. The memories of his fallen squad, the guilt and the rage that had consumed him for so long, threatened to overtake him once more. But as he looked to Alara, her unwavering strength and compassion a beacon in the darkness, he found the courage to confront his fears and fight not for vengeance, but for the future they had dared to dream of. In the midst of the chaos, Rakan witnessed acts of bravery and selflessness that shook him to his core. He saw civilians risking their lives to shield the wounded, soldiers sacrificing themselves to buy precious moments of escape. And in those moments, he realized that true strength lay not in the ability to take lives, but in the willingness to lay down one's own for the sake of others. As the battle reached its crescendo, Alara and Rakan made a final, desperate stand, their backs against the walls of the hospital they had sworn to defend. The Korvax forces, armed with superior weapons and driven by a ruthless ideology, seemed an insurmountable foe. But the defenders, fueled by the unbreakable human spirit, fought with a ferocity and determination that belied their small numbers. In the end, it was not superior firepower or advanced tactics that won the day, but the indomitable will of those who refused to surrender in the face of tyranny. Against all odds, the hospital stood, a testament to the resilience and courage of those who had fought to protect it. As the dust settled and the Korvax forces retreated, Alara and Rakan emerged from the ruins, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. Around them, the survivors of the battle wept and embraced, their relief and gratitude a palpable force in the air. In that moment, Rakan realized that he had found something worth fighting for, something that went beyond the thirst for vengeance that had once consumed him. He had found a purpose, a reason to live in the bonds of camaraderie and compassion that had been forged in the heat of battle. Alara, her eyes shining with tears of joy and sorrow, looked upon the faces of those they had saved, and knew that their struggle had not been in vain. For in the midst of so much darkness, they had kept the flame of hope alive, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit. As they set about the task of rebuilding, Alara and Rakan knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The scars of war ran deep, and the healing process would be a journey of its own. But armed with the knowledge of what they had accomplished, and the unbreakable bonds they had forged, they faced the future with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. For in the end, they knew that the true measure of their victory lay not in the battles they had won, but in the lives they had touched, and the love they had shared. And as long as that love endured, no force in the galaxy could ever truly defeat them. Healing the scars of war. In the aftermath of the Korvax attack, Dr. Alara Varis and Rakan Doran found themselves at the center of a shattered world, surrounded by the ruins of the once thriving hospital. Yet amidst the rubble and the grief, they saw a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild not just the physical structures, but the lives that had been torn asunder by the war. Alara, her medical skills now honed by the crucible of battle, set about the task of tending to the wounded, both in body and in spirit. She knew that the true scars of war lay not in the broken bones and bleeding wounds, but in the shattered hearts and minds of those who had survived. And so, with patience and compassion, she worked to mend the invisible injuries, to offer solace and support to those who had lost so much. Rakan, his once restless spirit now tempered by the wisdom of experience, took on the role of leader and guide. He rallied the survivors, offering them a sense of purpose and direction in the midst of so much uncertainty. Together, they began the slow and painstaking process of rebuilding, not just the hospital, but the very fabric of their war-torn society. As word of their efforts spread, Alara and Rakan found themselves at the center of a growing movement, a beacon of hope for all those who had been touched by the ravages of war. Survivors from across Zephyria flocked to their banner, drawn by the promise of healing and renewal. Among them were the broken and the lost, the soldiers and the civilians who had seen the very worst of what the galaxy had to offer. But in the embrace of the community that Alara and Rakan had built, they found a chance to start anew, to forge bonds of friendship and purpose that transcended the scars of their past. Alara, her heart full of love and compassion, became a mother figure to the orphaned children, a healer to the wounded veterans, and a confidant to the grieving widows. She poured her heart and soul into the task of rebuilding, knowing that every smile, every laughter, every moment of joy was a victory against the darkness that had once threatened to consume them all. Rakan, his tactical mind now bent towards the task of reconstruction, worked tirelessly to fortify the defenses of their growing community. He trained a new generation of defenders, not just in the art of war, but in the values of compassion, sacrifice, and unity that had saved them in their darkest hour. Together, Alara and Rakan became the living embodiment of the unbreakable human spirit, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of unspeakable adversity. And as their community grew and thrived, they knew that they had found something worth fighting for, something that went beyond mere survival. In the quiet moments, when the work was done and the day was won, Alara and Rakan would often sit together, watching the sun set over the ruins of the city they had once called home. They would speak of the future, of the dreams they had for their people, and for each other. And though the scars of war would never truly fade, they knew that they had found the strength to carry on, to build a new world from the ashes of the old. For in the end, they had learned that the true measure of a person lay not in the battles they had fought, but in the love they had given, and the hope they had inspired. And so, as the years passed and the wounds of war began to heal, Dr. Alara Varis and Rakan Doran remained at the heart of their community, a living testament to the unbreakable bonds of the human spirit. And though the galaxy would never be the same, they knew that they had played their part in shaping a brighter future, one healing touch at a time. As the years turned into decades, Dr. Alaravary's and Rokendoran's legacy grew, spreading far beyond the borders of their once war-torn world. The hospital they had fought so hard to protect became a symbol of hope and healing, a beacon for all those who had been touched by the ravages of war. Under their guidance, a new generation of healers and leaders emerged, each imbued with the same spirit of compassion and resilience that had defined Alara and Roken's lives. They carried the torch of hope into the darkest corners of the galaxy, bringing light to those who had known only shadow. Alara, her hair now silver with the wisdom of age, continued to inspire and guide, her gentle touch and unwavering compassion a balm to all those who sought her aid. She became a legend in her own right, a figure of reverence and awe to the countless lives she had touched. Roken, his once battered body now marked with the scars of 1,000 battles, stood ever at her side, a pillar of strength and support. He became a father figure to the orphaned children of war, a mentor to the soldiers who sought to follow in his footsteps, and a wise counselor to the leaders who sought to build a better world. Together, they watched as their community flourished, as the seeds of hope they had planted took root and blossomed into something beautiful. They saw the children they had saved grow into adults, forging their own paths and leaving their own marks on the galaxy. And though the memories of the war never faded, Alara and Roken knew that they had achieved something greater than mere survival. They had shown the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit, the unbreakable bonds of love and compassion that could overcome even the darkest of times. In the twilight of their lives, Alara and Roken often sat together, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. They spoke of the trials they had faced, the losses they had suffered, and the triumphs they had shared. And as they looked out over the thriving world they had helped to build, they knew that their legacy would endure long after they were gone. For in the hearts and minds of all those they had touched, they had sparked a flame that would never be extinguished. They had shown that even in the face of the greatest darkness, hope could still flourish, that love could still conquer, and that the human spirit could still shine bright. And so, as Dr. Alaravary's and Rokendoran took their final breaths, surrounded by the love and gratitude of all those they had saved, they knew that they had lived a life well lived. They had faced the very worst that the galaxy had to offer, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate for it. Their legacy would live on, not just in the hospital they had built or the community they had nurtured, but in the countless lives they had touched, and the endless ripples of hope and healing they had set in motion. For in the end, they had shown the galaxy that even in the darkest of times, the light of the human spirit could never be extinguished. And as long as that light endured, there would always be hope for a brighter tomorrow.